Happy Tuesday to each of you, and welcome to our special edition of Perspective. This is Meet the Candidate. I told you it was Meet the Candidate Part 3, but this is actually Part 4. So we thank each of you who are joining us tonight. We're excited about our podcast tonight to receive more information. Before I go any further, I do want to stop and convey my condolences to the family of Dwayne Thomas. For those who do not know, he was a senior at Carver High School, which is located on the Birmingham's north side of town, and he was actually killed yesterday to another senseless act of violence. And this makes the seventh student, unfortunately, that was either shot or killed. I'm not sure if all of them passed away, but this is the seventh murder that we've had in our Birmingham City schools. So I did want to play that last instrumental, There Is Hope, because despite how things look, we have to keep the faith and be optimistic to realize that there's always hope. So let's definitely keep that family lifted up in prayer. Unfortunately, this is a time when his mother and father should be preparing to see their son walk across the stage at graduation. They are unfortunately making funeral arrangements. So definitely keep that family in your prayer and all of his senior graduating class as well. So again, thank you for joining us tonight. Again, this is Perspective Meet the Candidate Part 4. And we're just excited about the lineup. If you missed last night's podcast, you can go back and watch it. We had some great guests on last night. Last night we had Judge Thomas Thrash, we had attorney Chris Christie, and then we had Felicia Rucker Sumlin, who's running for Jefferson County Sheriff. So if you missed that, you can go back and watch it. But I'm excited tonight. Our first candidate is already backstage, so I'm not going to delay the time. But you will see me make announcements throughout the show tonight, so please make note of those. But our first candidate with us is no stranger to our viewing audience. She is actually Mrs. Lynneice Washington, who is seeking reelection for the Bessemer, um, Jefferson County Bessemer cutoff for district attorney. And to tell you a little bit about her, Mrs. Lynneice O. Washington is a resident of Bessemer, Alabama, and currently serves as the district attorney for the 10th Judicial Circuit of Jefferson County Bessemer Cutoff Division. Mrs. Washington was formerly employed as a prosecuting attorney with the Bessemer District Attorney's Office and worked with the Bessemer DA's office from February 2002 until February 2010 when she resigned her position to run as a candidate for district judge. Prior to becoming an assistant DA in 2002, District Attorney Washington was a solo practitioner in the general practice of law. Her practice mainly focused on domestic relations, family law, criminal defense, personal injury, and probate law. She opened her office and began her full time legal career in January 1997 after being admitted to the Alabama State Bar in September 1996. 2016 election year was a historical moment defining D.A. Washington as the first African American female to be elected as the first DA in the state of Alabama, as well as the first black woman to be elected as the first district attorney in Jefferson County. In her elected role as chief law enforcement officer for Jefferson County Bessemer Cutoff Division, D.A. Washington has indeed shattered the Powell glass ceiling, overcoming racial and gender barriers that have existed since the inception of our state. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, it is my great pleasure to introduce to some and present to others Mrs. Lynneice Washington. Good
Good evening.
evening. Thank you so much for joining us. We're excited to have you.
It is definitely my pleasure. I apologize. We're having some technical difficulties here.
Okay, that's fine. They are used to the technical difficulties that I have, as I always tell them, we're live, so anything that they see, it could definitely happen.
Oh, yes.
So let's go ahead and get right to it. We had a great pre-call on Sunday, so I know the audience is in for a treat tonight. So you won in 2016, the first African American woman, as I said, reading your bio, to ever hold this position.
Yes.
Um, let's start off by telling voters, because I know when we say Bessemer Cutoff Division, some people say, well, okay, you're saying Jefferson County, but you're saying Bessemer Cutoff Division. So let's tell viewers who are watching tonight, people that live in those areas, who can actually vote for you.
Well, good evening to your listening audience and your viewing audience. I'm so honored to be here. So we're talking about the Bessemer Cutoff. And the Bessemer Cutoff, it includes areas such as Fairfield, Midfield, um, Brighton, Lipscomb, Hoover, parts of Hoover,
Okay.
um, Pleasant Grove, Hueytown, Adger, Sylvan Springs, Dolomite, Roosevelt City. So it's a vast area.
Okay. All right. And let's talk about some of the things that you've accomplished in your first term as DA. I think that's well your second. Would this be your? You're going into your second term, correct?
Yes, I am. It's almost been 6 years, and so we
Okay.
just say 6 years when the election comes. But we had an opportunity to do so many things. And within my office, one of the first things that I did is formed a cold case unit,
Okay.
because there were cases that occurred in the Bessemer cutoff, specifically in the Brighton area. And when I got into office, just kind of taking an assessment of what I had to work with, those cases only had a police report. And it
Okay.
was, and I made the statement, even a dog in the street deserves better respect than this. So I was honored to bring on Chris Anderson to handle my cold case unit.
Okay.
Another one of the things we did is I started Operation Python again to combat the violent crime that was plaguing our communities. And Operation Python, I named it because we know a Python squeeze. And so I wanted to squeeze out the crime and get the attention of those who were committing the crimes and let them know that the Bessemer Cutoff is not a place to do that. And we partnered. I partnered with multi agencies, law enforcement agencies, federal, state, as well as county. And 90 days, we executed arrest warrants for those people who had violent charges, and removed um, guns and drugs off the streets. And we did that twice. I also did it in 2021. So I can go on and on and on. I'll
Okay.
pause.
Okay. So listening to all those great accomplishments, because you have accomplished a lot. Just seeing you on the news, on various other platforms such as this one, you've done a lot, and your work speaks for itself. And I'm sure those citizens and people that live in the Bessemer Cutoff area, they would definitely say that they have seen a change under your leadership as district attorney. Let's talk about some of those things that you may not have accomplished in the first 6 years that you're looking to accomplish in your next term.
Well, one is a huge project and is going to take a lot of moving pieces.
Okay.
But there is this invisible gulf between Birmingham and Bessemer that people don't like to cross over. And in Birmingham, there is a wonderful program called One Place. And
Okay.
One Place is located on the south side, and it's for those victims. They can go to that one place and they can get their police report. If it's a sexual assault, they get their exam. They can shower all in one place.
Okay.
And we need those services in the Bessemer cutoff area. And then, so that has been one of the things that I want to focus on in my next term. And then, like I said, that's huge. That's going to take a lot of moving parts, a lot of partners, and a lot of compromise.
Okay. And then in some of the issues plaguing us, I'll come back to this one because I know everybody's wanting to know. Okay, I want to hear her stance on the violence that's happening in our area. So we'll try to kind of say that towards the end. But when we talk about a person running for the position such as yours, kind of talk about operating in integrity, honesty, truth, and someone that's going to be relatable to them, and they know it's going to be a person that they say, hey, I don't have to worry. I can go to DA Washington about anything because she's that's just that relatable person. So kind of talk about that for a few moments.
Well, when I won and I was sworn in, I made a promise to the citizens of the Bessemer Cutoff that I would make them proud. And
Okay.
in doing so, that means that, I've had an opportunity to attend many community functions. And I try and make my presence known in the community, as well as for them to see that I'm implementing programs that will strengthen community and involvement. So, and we've done many things. When during the time that COVID was at its peak, I talked with my pastor at New Bethlehem Baptist Church, which is Thomas J. Rogers, and I
Okay.
asked him whether we could conduct a drive-through vaccination, and he gave me his blessings, and we had a drive-through vaccination clinic, and also we gave information, resources about rent assistance and voter registration and Head Start. So I'm very much involved in the community, and it was just really fun as people were coming through to get their vaccination or their boosters, to just interact with the community, so they'll know that I'm not untouchable. I'm a servant. I'm a public servant, and my policy is I try to keep my door open. But of course, if I just left it wide open with no guard there, I wouldn't be doing anything but sitting at my desk answering questions, and some which will never, they would never even accept. So, but I actually love what I do.
Absolutely. And one question I'll pose, ladies and gentlemen, if you do have questions, go ahead and get them in the comment section, and we'll make sure we get those answered before our segment with Mrs. Washington ends for the evening. But go ahead and post your questions, and we'll make sure we give her a lot of time to answer as many as she can. So my next question, and this is one I asked Mrs. Summerlin this last night, who's running for Jefferson County Sheriff, and I kind of want to ask the same question. So, district attorney for years, it's always been sort of a male dominated society role. When
Yes.
you first won the first term, talk about some of the kind of things that you may have had to deal with getting the opposite sex to respect you or take you serious. Talk about those, because these are things that are happening when women are elected to positions. And this is not to bash anybody who knows me knows that's not the type of programs that I operate. But those are types of questions, and that's the question that I'm sure our viewing audience would like to know.
Well, that's a very good question, actually, because everyone looked at the position of a district attorney as a male dominated
Okay.
slot, a male dominated profession. So even in the onset of running for district attorney, people already had their minds, that perception that a woman cannot run the office of district attorney. So when I did win, most of the meetings that I go to, the spaces that I occupy are mostly male,
Okay.
and a lot of times friends who I had known for years and worked with during the time that I was one of the assistant DAs. It kind of changed, so they had to get used to me on a different level. But once they saw that I was the same person I was in the district attorney's office serving as an assistant DA, then it took some time, but we still have those microaggressions that exist. And I just have to just roll on, just push forward and push through it. But because I've done so much within the community and during my administration, I have garnered the respect of many of the law enforcement people in this arena.
Okay. And our next question, this is a very important one, and this is one you and I talked about. People sometimes get confused with you saying that, well, she's the Bessemer district attorney, when really you are the Jefferson County Bessemer Cutoff District Attorney. Let's talk about that for a few moments.
Well, JaPaul, long time ago,
Okay.
in a land called long time ago, um, there was the cutoff was formed. It was originally, of course, it was Jefferson County, one county and one division. But about in 1901, that's when they created the Bessemer Circuit um, Court. And during that time, and then we were circuit solicitors, and then they rolled on to elected assistant district attorneys. But for years, it has been every person who has occupied this seat and occupied this space have been district attorneys. And if you say a Bessemer district attorney, then that's kind of in line with a city attorney, if you would.
Okay.
Because so it is not just the city of Bessemer, it's just that's where the courthouse sit is within Bessemer, but those surrounding communities and places around the Bessemer cutoff, that's all my jurisdiction. So
Okay.
it is actually Jefferson County. And also, Jefferson County is the only state and only county with two divisions. Most other places have one division, but because of the political split years ago, then the Bessemer cutoff was formed.
Gotcha. I've seen sample ballots on various districts in your area. You are referred to as the deputy district attorney. Tell
Mhm.
us what that is.
Well, again, it goes back to a law that in 1901.
Okay.
But as I previously stated, the men that were occupied this seat before me, they were all regarded as district attorneys. And this go round, I noticed, and it was funny, JaPaul, because I did not realize that it was deputy district attorney on the ballot until my son had an absentee ballot and he was looking at it and he was like, "Mom, when did you become deputy district attorney?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And I saw the ballot, and of course, I hit the roof. But because the only thing that has changed is the gender and the race of the person that now occupy the seat. So everything else, when I qualified as a district attorney, and I have run my administration as district attorney.
Approximately how many registered voters would you say there are in the Bessemer Cutoff Division?
There's over 130,000 registered voters in the Bessemer cutoff area. And a lot of people, even, and I look at the stats, and I'm trying to think of the census. Thank you, the census, and the census even incorrectly states that Bessemer have about the city of Bessemer has about 27,000 or so people. So even that in itself is incorrect. But in terms of the voting population, there are over 130,000 citizens that vote within the Bessemer cutoff jurisdiction.
Okay. COVID, when COVID first happened in 2020, we know that changed for everybody, and I'm sure especially our court and judicial system. Let's
Mhm.
talk about plans that you put in place to make sure that there wasn't a contact spread in the jails and court systems.
Well, what we did, my assistant DAs, we rallied together because the courts were shut down.
Okay.
And in terms of the jail, they started a spread of COVID within the jail. So these people who work the jail, they have families. So when they work and they're around COVID, they in contact with those inmates with COVID, they end up taking it home and it becomes a spread. And even the inmates, some of the inmates that were going in initially were already diagnosed with COVID, and a lot of them just did not know. But what we did, I had my district attorneys, my assistant DAs, to contact those attorneys with people that were within the jails to see whether there could be some way that we could have a settlement or something, not the violent ones, but just the ones that we could reasonably either do electronic monitoring or let them out on their own recognizances, but with the assistance of their attorney. So we did that, and so there were quite a few people that were placed on electronic monitoring, and some of them that were released. And in addition to that, we used that time. There was a backlog when I came into the office. So we used that time to look at all of those cases that we had on the shelf, and we looked at those cases and ended up dismissing about over 600 cases. Some of them just, they stopped at district court and no further activity was done. And no, that hold up people's lives. So I'm in office to do justice. And so what we did, a lot of those cases, we dismissed. And during the time when the courts let up, Supreme Court said, "Hey, judges can, they can have court, is within their discretion." I began having grand juries, and we set up the plastic screens, to kind of separate those jurors. We would normally have 18. We dropped down to 16. Everybody who testified at the mic, we would wipe down the mic. We would, just um, sanitized the place during breaks. We brought in lunches. We wanted to make sure that people did not, um, contract COVID and trying to carry out their civic duty. So I think the courts shut down March of 2020, and they did not begin having court again until about August of 2021. But we had already started with the grand juries because I did not want the cases to become bottleneck, and so we just kept moving it forward. And thank goodness we did not have one person to come back and say, a juror, person who served grand jury, to say that they contracted COVID during the time they were serving grand jury. So awfully thankful for that. And we were able to move justice forward.
Absolutely. And ladies and gentlemen, if you're just tuning in tonight, we do have Mrs. Lynneice Washington on. You're watching Perspective Meet the Candidate 2020 Part 4. And you can go ahead and put your questions in the comments for Mrs. Washington, and we would definitely get to them before we end this segment of the podcast. And please go ahead and tag and share, because while you may not live in her voting area, there are maybe some people that you know of that live in her voting area. Once again, and I'll have you to do this at the end, go ahead and talk about some of the districts and neighborhoods that are actually in the Bessemer Cutoff Division.
You're wanting me to identify some of those places?
Yes.
Okay. Like I was saying earlier, we have places, areas such as Brighton, Lipscomb. We have areas such as Dolomite, Mulga, Edgewater, and Hueytown, Pleasant Grove, Midfield, Sylvan Springs, out in McDonald Chapel. Like I said, the jurisdiction is quite vast.
Okay.
Oh, and I don't know what I said, Fairfield, but yes, Fairfield as well. And of course, Bessemer.
Okay. Gotcha. When you think of different cases that have come before you since being a district attorney, can you talk about one case that stands out to you more than others?
Well, one case when I just started my administration in January of 2017, the case of Mike Gelati started up in April of 2017. And if some remember, Mike Gelati, unfortunately, his life was taken as he was leaving his home early one morning to go to the gym. And that case was was touted by my opponent because he wanted to use that case as his platform, and everything was not done as it should. So when and I got a chance to meet the Gelati family, and by the time I started, any pretrial motions, any strategy, all of things were already formed before I got there. You cannot put together a case such as that, or any case, in 3 months. And I had just gotten there in January. But the assistant DAs that prosecuted those cases prosecuted to the best of their ability with the evidence that they had. And I never will forget Mr. Mike Gelati's, his father. And we still keep in contact because they understood. We gave them step by step what was going on, and by that being one of the very first big cases in the office, since I had been there, I was present with them and just kind of stayed by their side. But got a chance to meet his family, and that was a tragic loss. And I think that if some things would have been done differently, we may have gotten a different result. But like I said, I maintain contact with Mr. Gelati, his dad, who lives upstate, his wife, and who still lives in Alabama. And they're very gracious for the work that we did. It was just the public that did not understand that even say a robbery case. A robbery case, it takes maybe a year and a half just to get to trial, because your first step is district court, which is probable cause court. It's not a court that you determine whether a person is innocent or not, but it determines whether there's enough probable cause for the case to go forward to grand jury. Then after grand jury, then it has to go to if it's indicted, then it goes to a trial court. And then it has to be placed a schedule for a docket. So there is no case reasonably that can be brought and tried within 3 months. So that case that it stands, it kind of stands out with me. But thankfully, I have still have the support and the communication, good communication with the Gelati family.
When we think about being fair, you being a fair district attorney to all cases that come before you, talk about what that looks like.
And being fair, you have to put the blinders on, but apply the law. Um, and actually, we just had and talking about justice and taking violent crime off the street. Recently, we just had two trials whereby in one defendant in one case, the jury came back and found him guilty of capital murder and attempt murder. And then another case, the jury came back, a jury of the defendant's peers, came back and found that defendant guilty of murder and assault. I think it was two attempt murders and an assault. So justice is still prevailing, and the people, the assistant DAs that I have in my office, I've known them for a long time because I served as one of those assistant DAs from 2002 to 2010. So I had a bird's eye view of which assistant DAs had the better skills, and but I have to say that it has been an absolute pleasure working with every one of them, and they tried very good cases, and like I said, it was kind of difficult because they knew me as an assistant DA as on the same level as a friend. And then when I came into the office as an elected district attorney, so that kind of changed things, but we adjusted well, and I'm very proud of the work they do. So justice means to me that you have to apply the rule of law and apply it fairly. And there are times, and I'm one that believe in second chances.
Okay.
So, and when I say that, if there is an opportunity where the area may be gray and where the punishment doesn't necessarily fit the crime, and this may be a first time offender, to give them an opportunity. And I'm not talking about violent crime, but to give that person an opportunity, especially when it's our youth. Because a lot of times our youth they act and they don't think about the results of what could happen because of their actions. And I used to tell my son, every action calls for a reaction, and the collateral damage that comes a lot of times from convictions with our young people, it takes them a long way, and it damages their vision of their future. So anytime that my office can reasonably interject and put a person on, give them a second chance and put them on a better path, then that's what we do.
Okay. When we talk about our youth, let's kind of talk about mentoring for our youth. What does you may already have a program in place, but what does a program created by you look like where you're able to go into the school to visit with the children as far as elementary on up to high school?
Well, I have been very active in our school system and dealing with our children. One of the programs that we have, it started in, it was introduced to the Alabama District Attorneys Association some time ago, before my administration, way before my administration. And some of the DAs around the state of Alabama took hold to it, and some of them did not. My office was one that did not. But when I learned about the Helping Families Initiative from John Tyson, who's with Volunteers of America's Southeastern Division, he sat down and talked to me about the Helping Families Initiative and actually what it does. And he sold me on it. And what we did, we partnered with three of the school systems in the Bessemer cutoff: Fairfield, Midfield, and Bessemer, of course. And so those students with chronic absenteeism, those students who have behavior issues, they are referred to our program. And we triage the entire family because we don't know what's going on with that child at home that prevents him or her from performing well in school. So what we try to do, we try to divert that child from the prison pipeline because we know that is real, and we try to strengthen the family unit so that that will give that child a better environment, a more conducive environment to learn. Now that is with helping families. But now, even before I was able to get the Helping Families Initiative program started, I would go to my schools, I would read to the kids, and I felt that they needed to see someone that looks like me that was in the position that I'm in, so that gives them hope that they can do it too. And for the middle school, what I would do is go to the middle school and we would have these real talks. And we talk about what the term sexting, which is taking pictures of your body part and transmitting them to over the airways to a friend or whomever, and the repercussions of doing that, the the offense. There's a criminal offense in doing so. And I would also meet with the parents and let them know that those $5,000, $3,000 iPhones that you're buying your son or daughter, that if there's some inappropriate material that's on it, you don't get those phones back. It's kind of like giving a person a smoking gun back, you know. But I've really enjoyed having the opportunity, and even with our high school students, just to show them that if I can do it, then you can do it too. And you know, initially it was said that I broke the proverbial ceiling, but I did not break it for it to be repaired. I broke it so that it can remain open, so that other young people can come and follow that path. And they need to see hope. My mother had a sixth grade education, and my father had an eighth grade education. And I've been working ever since I was 15 years old. But I tell the young people, if you can dream it, you can achieve it. And with God, all things are possible.
Absolutely. And we do have one question that has come in. And I know earlier I asked what were some of the things that you would like to do in your second term that you didn't get to. This question: what is the most important thing that you would like to do in your second term?
Well, a lot of things, even during campaign season, we were able to establish the Jefferson County Community Food Box, even though it was going on in the Birmingham division of Jefferson County. We learned that it was going on and it did not exist in the Bessemer cutoff area. So even during this campaign period, I worked with Carrie Bontaine, which is the executive director of the Jefferson County Family Resource Center, and we were able to start the community food box in the Bessemer cutoff, and we do that um, every second Friday of the month. And so that gives people an opportunity to ride through and get fresh vegetables and food and vaccines, boosters, and there's also information about drug recovery. They also even ask people whether they want prayer. So that is done every second Friday. And even during this period as well, we started the homicide support group, and which is very important to have one of our community partners, Reverend Blanks, who has Perfect and Reconciliation Church in Bessemer. He is so wonderful, and he opened the doors of his church, of his sanctuary, for us to have the homicide support group. And it's amazing the people that come. We have, of course, trained therapists that come, and they oversee that hour and a half. But to see those people and how broken they are, and they just need someone to help them to pick up the pieces and give them hope again, give them hope in the loss of their loved one to move forward. But the biggest thing right now, as I stated before, too, is I want the West Jefferson One Place Family Justice Center during my next administration, and I'm going to claim it. We're going to work hard for it, and it's going to involve the county commission. Is going to involve the different municipalities that are within the Bessemer cutoff. Like I said, there's a lot of moving pieces, and so I'm looking forward to start working with that project.
Okay. have about two more questions, and then we'll be done. Of course, after I give the questions, I'll allow you to give any closing remarks that you would like to. My next question: when we talk about mental illness, and we know this is something that we're hearing a lot of, what resources or things you may have already put some things in place, but what resources have you put in place to make sure that you're working with the police officers, county sheriff, attorneys to make sure that they do have adequate resources to address mental health issues that they may have or could arise?
Ooh, y'all put a lot on the district attorney. My God. But we've had mental health court for quite a while,
Okay.
and that is once a person is arrested and then have to go through the court system, then there's an assessment done, and they are referred to mental health court.
Okay.
And the sheriff even recently, I think, is has a mental health program that he's initiated.
Okay.
So, but they don't get to the DA's office until they're arrested. So,
Gotcha.
but we do have mental health, and if there's anything that we can do, we want to be fair, but
Okay.
we still have to protect the community. We have to make sure that our community is safe. So we that's about the only program that is court based in terms of mental health
Okay.
that we have.
Okay. Your faith in God and your relationship with God. Let's talk about how that really goes hand in hand with your job on a day-to-day basis as district attorney.
Ooh, you got to pray to keep from saying some of the things that come to your mind. But no, in all seriousness, I do have a close relationship with God. Back in 2010, when I ran for district judge, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And it was during that time that my husband was in Iraq.
Okay.
He had just left, and I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And it was me at that time, it was my 14-year-old son. We were the only ones that were here in the household. And my husband, when I finally told him, and after it resonated with me, that it wasn't the grandmother, it wasn't the neighbor, it wasn't a friend, that it was me that had been diagnosed with cancer. It I told him, and what was going on, and explained to him the process. And what was so ironic is I remember clearly that the day that I realized that it's me. I remember sitting in my family room, and I got up and I went and walked to the kitchen. I walked to the kitchen. I couldn't remember what I walked in there for. And so I walked back to the family room, and then kept walking back and forth. And I said, hold up, God. Okay. All right. It's me. It's not anybody else. It's me. But I told him on that day, I choose to live. And my 14-year-old son, I wanted to see him grow up and graduate from high school and college. My daughter, my bonus daughter, I wanted to see her graduate, grow up, get married, have children. And I just told God, not now. And I walked in it. And during that journey, I lost all of my hair. And but understand, I had quit my job at the DA's office to run for district judge, so that was my job.
Okay.
And I kept it under the radar. My family knew about it, but I lost all of my hair and my eyebrows, my eyelashes, and I put a wig on. I started drawing my eyebrows on. I started putting the eyeliner on. And I lost the girls to save the woman, if you understand what I mean, as a part of that. But I went through chemo and I went through radiation, and I can truly say that God kept me. And my mother, who plays a big role in my life, even in her absence, she gave me that foundation to always trust God and always do the right thing. Do the right thing when you think that no one else is watching. Do the right thing when everyone is watching. And it just it makes for a better life. But I tell everybody anywhere I go, I'm not ashamed of the gospel. I'm not ashamed of Christ in my life, and I lean heavily on Him. But they say faith without works is dead. So I have faith, but I work every day.
Absolutely awesome. Last question, and we, like I said, we saved this one. Well, the last two questions. Um, the crime.
Hmm.
This and you and I talked about. Let's talk about what that looks like. And like I said last night, I said just about every time we talk about crime, you can't do this alone. It's going to take everybody coming together. The religious leaders, not just in Bessemer, but in Birmingham, Jefferson County, Danny Carr, our district attorney here,
Hmm.
law enforcement. It's a community thing. Let's talk about what that looks like for you.
Well, we have a very sad increase of violent crime, and what is even more sad is the fact that it's our young people who are getting in possession of guns. There's this proliferation of illegal guns, and they're getting a hold of them, and without no conflict resolution. You looked at me wrong. You disrespected me. You stepped on my shoe, and so I'm just going to shoot you. I'm just going to kill you. And what they don't understand and what they don't think about is that their action, for that person who loses their life, they're leaving a family, a hurting family that had nothing to do with whatever took place. And then for the person who commits the crime, that family is changed, because if that person is apprehended and is brought before a court of law, then they are looking at their family to give me money, to retain me an attorney. Every time they call, they think that the family need to be at their beck and call. But it's all about the choices that our young people make, and old people.
Okay.
And I don't know what is going on. It seems like this is an evil spirit that's just kind of looming over the world, and people are going crazy everywhere. It's not just in Alabama, it's not just in Jefferson County, it's all over the world. And we can't work within our own little silos and think that we're going to be able to create change and make a difference. From the families, from the foundation of the families, to the schools, to the churches, to law enforcement, to the district attorney's office, probation and parole. I mean, it's going to take everyone to come together at the table, to try and put together some balanced interrupters. And it even will take even people who have been in the system, who have their lives have turned around and they have changed, to come back and speak truth to these young men and young ladies, and let them know that what they're doing is not the answer. That they have to think about that their actions, and know that there are repercussions to their actions, and some your life will never change. So it's going to take all of us. And if I had the answer to this, oh my God, I'd be a rich woman. But unfortunately, I don't. But I
Absolutely.
know it'll take everybody working together.
Absolutely. Last question, and then after you answer the question, you can give whatever final remarks you like to make. What makes you the better candidate?
Um, People know what they're going to get. They have seen the works that I do in the community. I administer from a three-pronged mission approach of promoting public safety and put programs in place for that. And I try to be transparent. I try to be accessible to the community. I don't lie about the things that I do within the community, and I actually live in the cutoff. And in terms of someone knowing or don't knowing what is to be expected from me, because of the things that I've done this past 6 years, they know.
All right, awesome. Well, I want to thank you for taking the time to join us tonight. And ladies and gentlemen, we are 7 days away next Tuesday. So if you live in the Bessemer Cutoff Division, you need to strongly consider casting your vote. Notice I didn't force you, because every individual has the right to vote for the best candidate of whoever, whom or she believes. But you see the woman before us tonight, and I think she's told you a great deal about her experience and what she's looking to do in this second term. So we are asking you to consider Lynneice Washington to give her 6 more years to do some other things that she couldn't complete, and to make the the Jefferson County Bessemer Cutoff Division a great place for all. And I've already posted in the comments, but this is her Facebook page. Very simple. Re-elect Lynneice O. Washington. And everybody can follow her page, regardless if you live in her district or not, and consider sharing it. And then also, here is her website, dalynneice.washington.com. Again, if you click both of those links in the comments, it will automatically take you to her page. And I'm sure these last days, she would welcome any of you making any last minute calls on her behalf, assisting with canvassing, and even making donations. What we don't understand, these candidates run, but it does take our support to make sure that they have a successful, well thought out race. So again, thank you for coming on.
Just one correction. I'm sorry. The Facebook is actually Lynneice Washington for district attorney.
Okay.
So that's the correction on and Jeffco Bessemer DA as well.
So I'll make that correction once we end the show and post the corrected link. And thank you for bringing that to my attention. But again, we want to wish you the best of luck. And
thank you so much.
In re-election, we do look forward to bringing you on periodically, so you can keep us up to date with the different initiatives that you have in the Bessemer Cutoff Division.
I would love to come back and talk to your viewing and listening audience. Thank you, JaPaul, for this opportunity.
You're welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Mrs. Lynneice Washington, who is again the candidate. She's seeking re-election, rather, for the district attorney in the Jefferson County Bessemer Division. What I'm going to do now, we will have a brief station break, and when we come back, our next guest, she's already backstage, attorney Adrienne Moffett Powell. She's running for Jefferson County Circuit Judge in place 23. Please hold.
If you love someone, you better tell them now. Tell them, tell them, tell them, tell them, tell them, tell them, tell them. Oh yeah, yeah. Come on. We all need a little love when we get down in the dumps, because we gon' be alright. 'Cause the love in a vision gonna help us make it through. But you know we gon' be alright. Let's go. Wanna improve your love.
right. Wanted to throw that in just as a little to keep the mood upbeat. Like I said, we're praying for the family of Dwayne Thomas, who was the victim of senseless murder yesterday. He was 17 years old and he was a senior student at Carver High School. So definitely keep that family lifted in your prayers. Our next guest is backstage and she is ready. It is none other than Mrs. Adrienne, attorney Adrienne Moffett Powell. She brings to the table more than 13 years experience as a practicing attorney. She graduated with honors from Miles College of Law in 2007 and founded her own law firm in 2008. Attorney Powell has served as a special judge in both family and criminal court in Jefferson County. She was named a top 10 female attorney in family law by Attorney in Practice magazine in 2021. Birmingham Magazine also recognized her as a top attorney in 2020. She has logged more than 6 appearances on WBRC's Fox 6 Law Call and is regularly called upon to speak as an expert on domestic relations law. She maintains membership with the Birmingham Bar Association, Alabama Lawyers Association, Magic City Bar Association, Bessemer Bar Association, and the Metro Birmingham NAACP. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my indeed pleasure to present to some and introduce to others Attorney Adrienne Moffett Powell. Give me 1 second. Let me go ahead and get the background changed out. All right. Good evening.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely good to have you on. So let's go ahead and get started. We're still good on time, so I want to make sure that we give you your full time allotted. So first of all, for those who don't know, the seat that Adrian is actually running for currently, this seat is being held by Judge Agnes Chappelle, and Judge Chappelle has actually decided to retire. Um, so let's kind of talk about that for a while. Judge Chappelle is a no stranger to the Birmingham court system. And in doing your research, I am confident that you're more than capable of doing the job. Let's kind of talk about your journey in meeting because I've seen you out. Well, I haven't seen you out, but I know you were at my church on Sunday that I'm told by church members. I'm a member of New Hope. Let's talk about some of the things that you're hearing from members of the community. Things that, first of all, before we get started there, tell us the division that you're running for. Let's talk about what this judge seat, what the type of judge that you will be.
Yeah, absolutely. So the division that I'm running for is domestic relations division. And I'm
Okay.
glad you asked that because a lot of people think domestic violence. I've noticed that. But
Absolutely.
no, it is domestic relations division, meaning that I am a domestic relations attorney. That means I handle cases such as divorce, custody, child support, visitation, distribution of property, as well as some PFAs, which deals with domestic violence. And all of that is under that umbrella of divorce matters. So, yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about some of the things that community people in the community have told you they would like to see different in the particular part that you're practicing. Let's talk about that for a few moments.
Okay, so mainly what I've been hearing is more co parenting.
Okay.
And I have been hearing a lot from the males about extending visitation or some type of shared custody. Those have been the main two topics that have been brought to me since I've been running for domestic relations judge. And I'm glad you said that because you see these things and I hear them from my clients or I hear them from friends and family. But once I decided to run and I had to kind of be out there in the community, you start to hear other little issues. And then I did not realize that that is a big one. It's not just family and friends. It's coming from a lot of the males and it's coming from, like I said, a lot of the community, co-parenting and that shared custody.
Absolutely. When we talk about co-parenting, and we'll start with divorce first, because we know that all parents that are co-parenting, some have never been married before. So let's talk about divorce first.
That's true.
To make sure that environments are healthy on both ends in co-parenting, what particular plan do you have in place to make sure that is?
So domestic relations as well as family court, but I will say this, I see it more in domestic relations.
Okay.
That we have programs. We have one of the biggest things is called Our Family Wizard. Our Family Wizard is a program that allows each party to input information as it relates to the child into this particular system that allows each parent to pull it up. They will have an account, can pull it up and review it. So it can be extracurricular activities as it relates to the child, any issues, pick up, drop offs, someone's going to be late. They can input this in there without having to actually communicate with each other. When you have Our Family Wizard, if there's an open case and a judge orders that the parties utilize that during the pending case, if there's a guardian ad litem, which is an attorney who represents a child, they can have access to that as well. And it helps with the case because you get to monitor and see what each parent is doing. And if there's a custody battle, can also determine who's more of the involved parent. And that kind of helps with the decision as far as a recommendation far as custody goes. But also it gives a judge access. It can be presented, it can be printed out, it can be used as evidence in a case. But I like that, as well as, and that one is one that you would have to have a subscription to, and I think it's maybe like $99 a year, something inexpensive. But there is another app that's called Talking Parent, and that's free. It's also a co-parenting app that allows the parties to utilize that on their phone and input that same information. And therefore, you will know if there's a parent that has been withholding activities or some type of events that the other non-custodial parent can be involved in. You can know if they're withholding that information if they have that app and it's not being inputted, or you can see where there's a breakdown in communication. And a lot of that is best because you don't have to see it in front of the child.
Gotcha. Now we're seeing, I believe, a rise in divorced males who possibly have sole custody of the child where there is co-parenting. And, for so long, it was basically a stereotype where the judge felt like they were always going to rule in the best interest of the mother. Let's kind of talk about how when we say, doing what's best for the child, that is something that you really plan to take into consideration when ruling cases that come before you, such as this.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's the thing I tell people. If they do their research on me, they will find out that I have represented quite a few dads. A lot of my clients have been dads, and I tell people it is a little bit different when you represent dads. A while ago, we had a lot of moms were primary custodians. And a lot of judges were leaning towards that because they seemed like more of the nurturing type. And therefore, most people did not think, especially when it came to young kids doing custody cases, they didn't feel like dads could be the nurturing or could take care of a child during what they would call the tender years of the child. But now that has changed quite a bit. I do see more dads that are out there actually fighting for custody. And sometimes people say, well, moms are always the one that judges give custody to. But people fail to realize one thing I did notice, there has now somewhat been a change, but a lot of times dad was not petitioning for custody. And so that's why a lot of the custodial parents were mom. Dads were not fighting for custody. It is starting to somewhat be a little bit of a change and a rise, but it's still honestly not that much. But when you do have that, what people have to realize when you have a domestic relation case and these parties are divorcing, if this is a child that's born during a marriage, they are automatically considered to be 50-50 parents unless it is proven to the court that one parent is considered to be unfit or it's not in the best interest of the child to be in that particular parent's custody. So they should start on equal footing. And then if evidence is presented that one should not be considered to be, I guess, like I said, in the best interest of the child to be the custodial parent for several different reasons, then the court makes a decision and say, well, this may need to be the primary custodian because of X, Y, and Z. But if you have similar parents, they'll both have a great relationship with the child, then you have to do what's in the best interest of the child. And I believe at that time, you want to look at equal parenting. Or if that dad presents a case that is better for him to have custody for whatever reason, and there's several things that can play out. There's drugs, there's abandonment, this particular dad has been more involved, then yes, courts are awarding custody to dads at that point. But when they're 50-50, you may want to look at shared custody, or you may want to look at exceeding the standard visitation schedule for the best interest of that child, maintaining that stability.
Gotcha. So I know everybody that's viewing now, I'm sure we all, if I could see everybody, we all would have our own definition of what an unfit parent is. And I'm sure most of us probably would be incorrect because it was our own interpretation. But from a legal perspective, tell us what makes a parent unfit?
Well, there are several things that could qualify for a parent to be unfit, but the biggest one would be drugs. You see a lot of that, or you see, like I said before, a parent that has not been in a child's life. So not necessarily full on abandonment, but if there's a particular parent that has not been involved, has not been visiting, has not assist in the upbringing or caretaking of that particular child, that can be one. You also see if the parent is a danger to the child. It could be domestic violence. It could be at some point the child have maybe been a part of some type of abuse, physical abuse, as well as mental abuse. Those are the things. Or if you have a parent that's not capable of assisting in the upbringing, that may not have the ability to actually help educate, help actually care, maintain, or make sure this child is safe, then that's other things too.
Mental illness, of course, that's something that I just spoke with D.A. Washington about.
Mhm.
What plans do you have in place to implement programs? Because a lot of times, I don't think we talk about this enough with the legal system. A lot of the cases that the judges try, there can be mental illnesses that occur. What types of plan do you have to make sure that people come before you in different cases to make sure that they get the proper treatment that they need?
So here's the thing. I make sure I tell people, as judges, we have to apply the law. We
Okay.
can't necessarily bring in new programs that have not been, addressed by like the presiding judge and things of that nature. But
Okay.
what I will say is this: you do see a lot of mental health issues that come before divorce court, and it mainly comes up when you're dealing with custody matters. So what I will say is this: what I would like to see more of, if you can show that this parent, let's just say that there is some type of mental issue, but they are still able to maintain through their medication, and you can show that they're not necessarily a danger to the child, then I would suggest at that point, you can have an open case, maybe do a review, because they do a lot in criminal court, but that is something that's a little bit different in domestic relations. And maybe do reviews and make sure that they're still actually taking their medication and doing what they need to do. And that if it's not shown that they are going to be a danger to the child, then that may be something that the courts can look at and say, well, not necessarily custody, but we can have some type of visitation. But if there's mental health issues and it's to the point that you can see that there may be a danger to the child, a lot of people think that they continue a completely X out visitation. No, you can't close the case out without any type of custodial time with that parent. Sometimes it just means that it has to be supervised, but they do allow them to still have some type of relationship and see the child. So again, you don't see it quite often in domestic relations, but I think it would be quite creative to kind of tap into what they do in criminal court, have a case open, do reviews, and see how they're maintaining it. And if it doesn't show that they're not a danger and it's something as simple as maybe taking their medication for depression, then yes, I think you can monitor that and make sure that they still have that safety part in and have a great relationship with the child.
On that same vein,
Mhm.
what other programs would you, well, not really programs, but what other things would you like to see implemented that we really don't see in domestic relations court?
Yeah, so in domestic relations court, a lot of people talk about, and if you practice in there quite often, you'll know that we have most of the programs that people are asking about. And the main ones are the co-parenting, like I spoke about, counseling. We also have mediation that a lot of people ask about or say that they want to implement, but we already have those things. We also have free mediation. We have what's called a scheduling conference where there are attorneys that volunteer to be mediators on cases, and I volunteer myself as a mediator.
Okay.
But one of the biggest things that I would like to see a little bit more of program-wise is counseling. You don't see a whole lot of the counseling. Sometimes people are reluctant to it, and so they kind of maybe push back from it. But I do believe from the cases that I have seen, counseling and I've seen parenting coordinators step in on, I think have been very beneficial and helpful to the parties as well as to the children. And one of the biggest things that I talk about that you don't see much counseling on is domestic violence. There is a lot of counseling that people talk about having for the victim. But children who experience or witness their parents involved in those, those physical altercations, that is a lot on the child as well. And so you don't see people talk about counseling for the children. And I think that's something that we should do, and maybe hopefully can see more of counseling for children that have been around and have witnessed domestic violence incidents or issues between their parents.
In domestic relations court, do we typically see juries? And depending on you how you answer, okay, you said no, tell us why not.
Because that's not what the court has set up system-wise.
Gotcha.
So in domestic relations, we have, in several courts, we have bench trials,
Okay.
and we have jury trials. Domestic relations court is built up of circuit court judge seats, and they're all bench trials. So that means that I tell people, you have to do your research. You have to know who you are voting for as a candidate, because when you vote for that particular person as a judge, pretty much the buck stops at them. There is no sending it out to a jury of their peers, letting them make a decision, and then domestic relations judges are the ones that give sentencing. That's criminal court. We do have, of course, appeal processes. So, of course, that means if there's something that a judge has made a ruling on and the parties disagree with or feel like it is in error, then yes, you can file an appeal. But people have to realize it is so important to have the right judges on the bench, because they are pretty much the end of all ends on cases that do not have jury trials. But criminal court does. Criminal court has jury trials, but they also have bench trials, and they have jury trials. So district court, they do bench trials. Circuit court and criminal court, they do jury trials. But you don't have that in domestic relations.
And we're going to stop for a moment, and I do want to give you the opportunity to tell people listening who can vote for them, because I don't want anybody going to the poll and say, wait a minute, I liked everything she said, but she wasn't on my district. So go ahead and tell people what district or neighborhood or whatever do they have to live in order to be able to vote for you.
Okay, and that list is pretty long, but I'm gonna cover as many as I can. So I'm running for Jefferson County Circuit Court Judge, Domestic Relations Division. That means that the entire Jefferson County can vote for me, with the exception of the Bessemer cutoff. So I am running in the Birmingham division, and most people mistakenly believe that it's only Birmingham. But just to clarify, Trussville can vote for me, Hoover, Homewood, Ensley, Centerpoint, parts of Pinson, Moody, Leeds, So again, it's everything to make it easy. Every area that you can think of, Adamsville, every city, Irondale, with the exception of the Bessemer cutoff, you can vote for me.
Gotcha. Okay. And so our next question, let's talk about your experience and preparation in getting to the point where it prepared you to run for this position.
So yes, again, as I spoke a little bit earlier, you have to know who your candidates are. Experience is so important, and especially when you're talking about domestic relations, because we're dealing with family, we're dealing with children, we're dealing with your loved ones. So when you deal with that, the reason I say experience, and I definitely have that, just to kind of give you a little bit of my history, which you gave like a great intro. And I was like, well, what am I going to say? You gave it all. So thank you for that. But I have 20 years legal experience. I worked for 6 years for domestic relations attorneys, and I was their legal assistant and kind of found a passion in that. And when I went into private practice as a brand new lawyer, I started in family court, and I then kind of found that I love that area, and it's so close to, of course, domestic relations, that I start to build my practice with that. And so I have dedicated my practice to domestic relations and family law matters. And I've been in private practice now for 14 years, almost 14 years. One of the other things that I have done, I have set a special judge, which you named. And the most important thing to know about that is when there are judges that are unavailable to handle their cases, they call on me as an attorney. And that means so much, because that means that they trust me as an attorney to go in their courtroom, sit on their bench. And I have heard cases on numerous occasions, so several different judges. I've heard cases and made rulings as a judge. My rulings stand, that order stays in place. I tell people I've represented hundreds of domestic relation cases, but I've handled hundreds of domestic relation cases. And I'm proud to say I've done that more than any candidate that's in this domestic relations race. And the reason I say that, not just to kind of say, hey, here are my accolades, but to kind of pinpoint that experience. You want to have done those bench trials, and that's how I have prepared through so many trials. You learn those small nuances of the law that makes it important when you become judge. So that's how I have prepared for this particular seat, by focusing on nothing but that.
Absolutely. Is there any domestic relations case that has come before you that stands out to you more than others? And as much as you could share, because I know some details are limited, but if you could just share briefly with us.
Yes. So I have been, proud to have several clients that at this point have pretty much become friends and family and things of that nature. So I'll try to make sure I touch on the ones that are more on a lively note, because I had someone ask me about judges that do divorce on TV. And I say, I'm not such a fan, because divorces are hard on parties. They're hard on children. I have people in my office that cry, and it's never really, to me, a fun matter, and it's quite different than what you see on TV. So I'll just keep it on a lighter note. One of the ones that stand out to me, I represented a couple in a divorce. I represented the wife in a divorce. They were an older couple, and they had been married for several years. However, they had been separated for quite a while. And believe it or not, there were no children, no pets or anything property-wise. We really had to fight over, except for one thing. We fought over a hot tub for a couple that was, and they were like close to 70.
Wow.
And we fought over a hot tub, and both were actually living in apartments.
Wow.
Neither one of them truly had a place to put the hot tub. It was in storage. And we truly went to court and fought over a hot tub. And I'll tell you this, I got that hot tub. My client wanted a hot tub. I don't know what she did with it, but we wanted the hot tub, so we got the hot tub.
Wow. When we are voting for judges, all voters, a lot of us, we tend to look at those that operate in honesty and integrity. Tell us what that looks like to you.
And also the right temperament. That's important too. Yeah, that's important. I'm a firm believer that if you look at the candidates and what they were doing before they decided to run, before they decided to be out in the community and say, hey, I'm a judicial candidate, you will find out who they're pretty much going to be on the bench. You can pick up their character then. And I myself am proud to say I was always involved in the community. I've done things prior to running. I've participated in, different activities, food drive, clothing drive. I've spoken at several engagements. I make donations, whether it's monetary or whatever, is needed. I'm heavily involved in different organizations, and most of them are absolutely those community service-based organizations. One is my sorority, which is AKA, and I'm also a member of Junior League of Birmingham. And I tell people these organizations, they don't come out for us. So if you show that you want to be involved in the community, it says a lot when you're a part of it, because that means I went to them on my own and said, hey, I want to be something. I don't want to just be the one that go to work and come home. I want to have some type of presence. So when you say, what does that look like? I have experienced as an attorney what it feels like for a judge to not treat me fair on a case or not treat my client fair. And it's the bad feeling. I don't like the feeling. I don't like what it looks like for my clients. I don't like how my clients feel about it. And so that's one of the reasons why I have made a part of my platform that, yes, every candidate is going to tell you they're going to be fair, but I know what it feels like. So yes, I am going to be fair. You also want that right temperament. We're talking family, loved ones. You want someone that's going to listen and understand. That's what that looks like when you're talking about domestic relations. You're talking about somebody that's caring and not looking at you as another case on the docket, that's willing to see what programs are needed, that's willing to see what the lawyers are actually saying, that's willing to listen to what's going on and how do we make or maintain some type of stability for a child that although there's a divorce and they're going into a different household, that's the stuff that's so important. And that's what that looks like in my opinion.
Being approachable and relatable. And when I talk about this goes beyond, being on the bench. Somebody may see you at the grocery store, out with your family, out at any of these wonderful events that Birmingham puts on. Talk about what that looks like to you, because a lot of times we vote these candidates in and they say, well, I'm going to be approachable. And a lot of times you see them, that's not what you said when you ran the race. So kind of talk about that for a few moments.
Well, if anyone can tell you, and I don't know if anyone can log in and make a comment, they will tell you, Adrienne Moffett Powell is absolutely down to earth, and I'm very much approachable. And honestly, I believe that that has been a blessing for me in this race. I feel like because of my personality, and it has always been what you see, and it's not going to change, that makes people seem like I'm relatable as a person, and I never appear untouchable. And so when I see people out, I'm gonna hug you, I'm gonna high five you. When I see my clients out, it's hey, Attorney Powell, and I'm like, hey girl, what you doing? Something silly because I'm silly anyway. And I don't know if you're aware, but I have a nickname that is very common that I had to put it on some of my literature because I'm afraid that I may be missing votes if I don't put it out there because most people don't know my real name. But it is Shank, and it is a family nickname. It's a childhood nickname. People love Shank. I love people. So again, as you say, what that looks like, I was approachable before I decided to run. I'm still approachable as a candidate. It won't change on the bench.
Awesome. Okay, so we talked about honesty, integrity, and having the right temperament, compassion, because let's face it, we talked about just some of the cases that you tried since you've been a lawyer, and then when you do get elected to the bench, some of the different cases that you can see. Talk about having compassion.
And so that compassion goes very to the temperament.
Okay.
You when I said you want someone that's going to be compassionate, that means again that listening. You want someone that's not so hardcore about their decision making, and that realize, for example, if there's a case that's involving custody, and you have a parent that may have somewhat dropped the ball on something, but not so extreme that it should disrupt what they have custody wise or their time with their child. That's where the compassion comes in. You want to listen to what has happened. You want to hear the whole story before you make a decision that affects everyone's lives as well as that child. You also want to judge that when it comes to that compassion, that not necessarily going to say, hey, this is your final straw. You've done wrong. We're done. You want to understand and say, okay, is drug a problem? Let's see what we're doing with treatment. Is it that there's just some type of communication breakdown? It's not really one parent's fault over the other. Okay, let's see where that breakdown has come in. When you're talking about those things, that's to me where that compassion comes in. These are not criminal cases. These are not civil cases where you just a name on a sheet of paper. That's where that listening and understanding, in my opinion, comes in.
We have about 12 minutes left. What makes you the better candidate?
That experience. and so again, to me, I am the better candidate because I've done this and I have made this my primary area of focus. I am one of those people that do not feel like you should be doing a little bit of everything and then not doing domestic relations, then decide that you want to run for domestic relations. Everyone knows that I eat, sleep, and live domestic relations. I've been doing it throughout my private practice and was doing it for attorneys before I went into private practice. So when I say I have 20 years of legal experience, it's not doing a little bit of everything. Even though when you deal with domestic relations, there are some different areas that do play up under that umbrella. You're going to see a little bit of contract, but again, that's under domestic relation cases itself. But have your focus been somewhere else, then that's a little concerning. To me, you become knowledgeable of the law when this is what you primarily do. And I have, several endorsements. I have judges that can speak on that. It has been quite clear. I've put that on my social media. Judges don't just go out there and endorse candidates because they know their name is stamped on it. And I tell people I'm blessed to say I have that experience and that judges have recognized that experience and feel like I would be a great addition to the bench. And I can go through those names of judges, but I don't know how much time we have. But there are quite a few, so you all are welcome to look it up. Mainly the domestic relations presiding judge, and I think that is a big deal for her to step up and think that I would be a great candidate.
And I am actually posting now in the comments both Attorney Powell's Facebook page, candidate page, and her website. So once we end the podcast tonight, please make sure that you go to her Facebook page, like it, feel free to share it, and share this platform, because one of the reasons I've done this, and this is something that I told you offline, for so long our voters have not been informed. So that is why you do see platforms such as this, and I do want to give kudos to Chris Coleman on the think tank. I think he started this in March, and he's tackled a lot of the candidates. And then Gary Richardson, for all of you early risers on WJLD, 7 o'clock in the morning, he's tackled a lot of candidates. And we do this not for ratings per se, but to make sure that our candidates are informed so that you will know when you vote in 7 days, 1 week from today, that you make your vote for the right candidate. Because a lot of times, and let me say this, it's easy to go in and vote for your friend. It's easy to do that. But one of the things, and I learned this years ago, if friend was leading my district or wherever I reside in whatever area, if there's been no change in that, we can still be friends, but I really need to look at the full circle and say, well, hey, I have a decision to make. No love lost, but I need to cast my vote for that person that's going to bring the best outcome all around. And that is what we need in all of it, and especially in our judicial system, because for so long, people feel like that they aren't given a fair trial. We don't think those things happen in domestic relations, but it does. So it's very important that we do that. So once again, you can click on her Facebook page and website after the podcast tonight. In talking about, we talked about a great deal tonight. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you would like to capture in our final moments?
Yeah, very quickly. One of the biggest things that I noticed that a lot of people don't really ask about is, like I kind of touched on, discretion. Domestic relations judges have a large amount of discretion, probably more than some of the other judges do. And where that discretion kind of comes in, to give you an example, the standard visitation schedule that I kind of touched on, the standard visitation schedule that you see in Jefferson County is normally every other weekend, Friday from 6 to Sunday at 6. Non-custodial parent alternates the holidays with the custodial parent, and then they have about 6 weeks in the summer. One of the things as far as discretion goes, if there are two parents, like I spoke on earlier, and the court say, well, we might not necessarily do shared custody, but if there's two parents who have a great relationship with that child, and we want to try to focus on maintaining some type of normancy for that child's life, and that's where the court can say, okay, well, we have this non-custodial parent who's a great parent. So won't we do this instead of saying Friday from 6 to Sunday at 6, every other weekend, which takes us like 4 days out of 30. We can say, well, okay, instead of Friday picking this child up at 6 o'clock, you can pick the child up Thursday after school and return the child Monday morning. That is the biggest thing that I want people to realize. Judges have that type of discretion to make those small decisions that they think will help benefit the child as well as the parties.
Okay. Final question. We're seeing a lot of youth and children at a younger age. They know what they want to be, and without question. Would you be open to doing like mentoring? I know we have career days, but would you be open to doing like mentoring where even some of our high school students can come in and shadow you? Not necessarily in cases, because I know that can kind of be confidential, but for mock trials to give them an idea of what that looks like.
Oh yeah, actually I do a lot of it now. I do a lot of career day. I just did Chalkville career day, I think last week. I've spoken at Bessemer City High. I can go through the list. Anytime I'm asked to speak at a school. I also have one of the Miles Law School student who currently, you may have seen her in the video, she's currently shadowing me. I have opened that door to, I did an interview and brought one of the high school students that I met on the campaign trail with me. Absolutely. I'm open to anyone who wants to be a part. It also builds your resume, prepares that, that look for when they apply for law school, if that's what they planning to do. So yes, anyone can reach out to me via email. You can call my office. I'll be happy to speak at schools. I've done it several times. I love to do it. And I love to have people to shadow me. And I actually could go to domestic relations court. Those hearings are open to the public.
Okay. I want to close on this note. You said everything that you try. If there is a married couple watching tonight and they are on the brink of divorce, what words could you give to them? Because what we have to understand, all cases don't have to come before you, and I don't think we don't talk about that enough. So
Right.
being someone who has practiced as an attorney for 20 years and you're running for a judge seat to continue in domestic relations, what words of wisdom and advice could you give to that married couple?
Two things. The first thing is I tell people when they come in my office and they're kind of wavering back and forth. I myself am married. I've been married almost 14 years. And I understand what that feels like as far as the possibility of a divorce. I tell them, hey, it's a possibility that you can, if you want to save your marriage, just because I'm a divorce attorney, I'm blessed. There will be cases no matter what. Go in, I say, talk to your spouse. Try to look into counseling. Try to see if there's other alternatives before you just go straight into divorce and paying divorce attorneys to go in and fight. Because sometimes attorneys make the situations worse than what they truly are. So I do encourage parties to try to work on their marriage. I do encourage them to seek counseling prior to. I do encourage them to look inside themselves or even give them some pointers that I've tried to put into my own marriage. The other thing is, like you said, there is mediation, and it doesn't have to be the mediation at cost. We do have that mediation that domestic relations already have set up where the parties can go before that and see if there's something that they can reach an agreement on before they bring their case all the way to a judge and let them make a decision on their lives and their children, because at that point you put it in their hands. I am a big fan of some type of mediation or some type of settlement prior to you having to just duke it out in trial. I'm not a fan of required mediation. But if the parties want that, they file motions, judges will give them mediators. If they want to be a part of those scheduling conferences, judges put them in there and put them on a mediation docket and let lawyers like myself try to help and intervene and see if we can reach a settlement. It saves them money and time. So I am definitely an advocate for it. And if that is something that parties can try to seek counseling on before coming before a judge or before even retaining counsel, I definitely encourage it. But if they feel like it can't work out, then they can call me.
So to wrap things up, I'll ask the first part of the question first. Being in the legal system, as I have several friends that are lawyers and some I've gotten to know that are judges, while it can be a rewarding career, sometimes you all can experience very stressful, long days. How has your relationship with God and your faith in God, how has that continued to keep you doing your career in the legal system?
Oh, I actually have to pray a lot. And I'm glad you said that. I am very close and very strong in my faith and my religion with God. I always have been. I feel like that's how I got where I am today. I couldn't do it by myself. And you're right. Outside of, judges, I can speak on behalf of an attorney who deals with emotional type cases anyway. Civil cases may not necessarily be that. I don't know. Unless there's some type of death in a family. But these cases are emotional. And when you have someone like myself who want to do a great job, who care about my clients, who are already just by nature hardworking, it does tend to weigh on my shoulders. It does tend to make it a tad bit stressful because I want to do well and I want to please my clients. You do have to, I'm a firm believer, you do have to pray. Your religion does have to stand there. And as a Christian and as a firm, as I say, a child of God, I have to pray that, or else I could not even get up in the morning and focus on what I have task at hand. But because I do that, I every day feel like I can take over and take on the world. And that was through my practice and now as a judicial candidate.
Awesome. So and we're still good on time because our next candidate hasn't joined us yet.
Okay.
So take about a minute or so, give you one final opportunity to do an appeal to the listening and viewing audience.
Thank you. So again, I tell everyone the biggest thing I have focused on in my race has been the experience, compassion, and that fairness, that right temperament. As I spoke on before, the reason the experiences is so important is because you want a judge who has been in this particular area, who has done this, to be on the bench and make those decisions. You don't want someone, in my opinion, to have done a little bit of everything and then decide that this is what you step into. That's how you build, like I said, that understanding of the law, those small little nuances of the law. And you do that from handling trials. And I've had so many, like I said, hundreds of cases. That means something because I've represented all parties. I've represented the children, but that's the experience as well. That's where that comes in. So I'm asking as a candidate, I'm asking for everybody to do their research. I promise, as I tell people, every candidate is qualified, but I'm the most qualified. And that fairness and that right temperament and that compassion is important when it relates to children. So I ask for everybody's prayers. I ask for their support, and I definitely ask for their votes on May 24th, 7 days.
And I've already posted in the comments, but I'm going to go ahead and put it on the screen. You can
Thank
follow
you.
the Facebook page at Vote for Powell. Real easy. And you can click on the link in the comments as well. And then website powerforjudge.com. Thank you so much for joining us and best of luck to you. And the next time we have you on the podcast, we look forward to having you on as Judge Adrienne Moffett Powell.
I love it. I'm claiming it. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I truly appreciate it.
Absolutely. So, ladies and gentlemen, again, that was Attorney Adrienne Moffett Powell running for Jefferson County Circuit Judge, place 23. And our last candidate has joined us for the evening, Senator Will Board. So we're going to go ahead and bring him on. He's actually running for U.S. Senate. Dr. Will Board is a bishop, pastor, engineer, educator, author, and candidate for U.S. Senate. He serves as the presiding bishop of Zion Ministries and pastor of St. Mark Missionary Baptist Church of Florence, Alabama. Dr. Boyd has also served in leadership positions in his fraternity, Omega Psi Phi Incorporated, and the community as a city councilman, county Democratic Executive Committee chair, and state Democratic Executive Committee member. He was the Democratic nominee for U.S. Representative for Alabama's 5th Congressional District in 2016 and Democratic nominee for Lieutenant Governor of Alabama in 2018. Dr. Boyd and his family reside in Hoover, Alabama. Give me 1 second to go ahead and change our screen out. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce the and present to others, Dr. Will Boyd. Good evening.
Good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm just fine. I was just enjoying the last interviews and forgot that I guess I need to go into your backstage area. So
no, you're fine. But thank you for joining us. So let's go ahead and hit it. We are proud to have a Democratic U.S. Candidate for U.S. Senate. We're very proud, and I believe that we have a hopeful candidate. So let's go ahead. This is an interview that I've been waiting on. Let's talk about why the push to run for U.S. Senate. I've read your background, and you've had some runs for other things. You served as a city councilman, but what was the push for you to say, I have to run for U.S. Senate?
Well, I believe others saw the passion that I have for people in our state. I have a strong desire to make sure every Alabamian has a shot at the American dream. And when I've looked at all of the issues that we struggle with across the board, from education to healthcare to the economy in Alabama, people just push me to get out and help really let everybody's voice be heard. We are dealing with so many challenges right now, and I'll be very brief and just say, we've seen a lot of legislation thrown out on the table. We've seen a lot of people feel that they have just been overlooked in our state. And so people believe this is just the moment. This is just the hour for me to put my hat in the ring and definitely be that fighter for every Alabamian.
Okay. Roe versus Wade, and I start there because that is probably one of the most hot topics that we're hearing about on a national level. Kind of talk to us about that and kind of tell us, if elected to this seat, how will you work with your colleagues to make sure that every woman, not just in Alabama, but across the U.S., is covered when it comes to her body and having the right to do what she pleases with her body?
Well, let me start by saying, if I could, I'm a bishop and a pastor. You've introduced me as such. I believe that life is important. I would love to say from the cradle to the grave, but I'll even say from the womb to the grave and even beyond. I'm usually the first person there when a child is born, and I'm the last person at the grave as the undertakers and the people are putting the dirt over the grave, and I'm dealing with the families long after the person has gone on. So life is important to me. I just believe in Alabama we have a way of talking about life depending on what side of the fence we're on, and we really don't address life overall. Let me just very clearly say I believe labels aren't good. I believe when we try to use labels like pro-life and pro-choice, we may do ourselves more harm. I believe that this is more of a subject that has to be approached from different directions. I know plenty of Christians who are pro-choice. I know plenty of people who are on the other side of the aisle who are pro-life. But what we have to really understand is what's going on right now goes far beyond labels and a position. I believe that every woman should make her own health care decisions for her own body. And what we're dealing with right now is really an overreach that's going to go far beyond the idea of what we're even calling abortion to really the privacy of individuals. When we dealt with COVID-19, we saw clearly where people who didn't want to believe in any type choice whatsoever decided that they wanted to make their own healthcare decisions, that they didn't think a vaccine was appropriate or needed, that they thought they didn't need to wear a mask. So we were sensitive to both sides, wearing a mask, not wearing a mask, keeping schools open, closing schools. We try to look at things from a holistic point of view, but when it comes down to this idea of Roe versus Wade, we get into very binary, siloed areas. But I believe we need to look at the root cause. Why does a woman find herself in the position where she has to make a difficult decision? Why do we see healthcare challenges in Alabama where there's a very high maternity mortality rate, a very high infant mortality rate, where we see 800,000 people in poverty, where we see that there are congressional districts with 125,000 plus women who don't have access to healthcare? So these issues really have to be addressed far more than one saying I'm left or right, choice or life. This has to be us really looking at the total issue, total package. And that's why I'm talking about healthcare overall from perspective of Medicaid being expanded and making sure that we look at rural hospitals that have been closed. I mean, we start talking about people who are carrying babies, people who are first trimester, second trimester, third trimester. They may be dealing with difficulties because they're far away from healthcare centers. I was in Pickens County campaigning on Saturday in a place where they don't even have a rural hospital at all. So a woman who is having complications would have to get in her car and drive to a neighboring county. And some can't do that because they don't have rides. So this is a big issue. But for the most part, again, we need to look at what the Constitution says. I'm personally pro-life, but I believe from a constitutional perspective, women do have the right to make their own healthcare decisions.
Okay. And so we started with that. If elected, let's talk about some of the bills that you yourself hope to be instrumental in getting passed.
Well, I believe it's no secret I've been a dean and a professor. I've been an educator, come from a family of educators. I believe we need to see something that's robust, something that's out there like a student success plan for 2023, 2024, that's going to really be very, very aggressive at targeting youth who want to be successful, not just from a perspective of choosing the right major, but really going into the skill sets that we need to possess in order for them to be prepared for this changing economy. A student success plan for me starts, talked about life again, at pre-K being fully funded in Alabama. Our 4 to 5-year-olds who aren't of age to go to kindergarten need to have a quality pre-K available to every one of them, fully funded. That's what we pushed for when we ran for governor, lieutenant governor, Walt Maddox and myself in 2018. We need to make sure that we have public schools that have the right resources, that aren't using Bunsen burners from 30 years ago in the science labs, but they're really fully funded and have everything they need, where teachers aren't trying to come out of their pockets to pay for school resources. We need to go a little further into investing in HBCUs, into community colleges, into trade colleges, and making sure that we're taking care of those people who are about to transition off into the workforce. We need to do a better job at marrying the blue collar worker with those people who have plans of leaving high school but not going to college. A blue collar revival is what I'm calling it. So again, it's from pre-K all the way to the higher learning area that we need to invest money to make sure our students are fully prepared. So that's the student success part of it. From a healthcare perspective, we need to obviously invest more money into programs that will continue to fight COVID-19. It's still real. Someone near and dear to me that actually helps me get from one location to another on a daily basis. If he were here tonight, my frat brother, he would argue that someone close to him, 25 years of age, just passed away last week. It's real. COVID's still here. So we have to be, again, on the cutting edge with looking at new variants that may be out there, preparing our people for whatever changes may be coming along the way, keeping schools open, keeping businesses open, but again, making sure everyone has access to affordable health care. Beyond that, we also need to bring down the prescription drug cost so that our seniors can afford drugs, so they don't have to decide between a meal and what they're going to do in terms of taking a pill. We need to get them into a place where that drug cost is low, where it's affordable. We need to invest more money in mental health programs. There's a bipartisan bill that's actually out there right now, legislation that's on the table that needs to be pushed forward, that not only targets getting more monies to states in the form of block grants, but you have to make sure you're more preventive, keeping people from having mental health crises, keeping people in a place where there is what we call parity, where there's equality. And when you're looking at substance abuse and mental health issue treatment versus other healthcare treatments, we need to help people understand that mental health is real. Everywhere I go, almost every campaign stop I've made in the last 2 or 3 weeks, mental health has been at the top tier for people's concerns. You would think it's jobs, the economy, healthcare, education, voter rights, but believe it or not, people are concerned. And I tell people, no matter what age you are, if you went through the pandemic, you went through something that mentally put some strain on you. And people might not understand the effects of what they've been through now, but I guarantee you, not long from now, weeks from now, months from now, years from now, people are going to see that this pandemic was punishing, not just from an economic standpoint, from a mental standpoint as well. So student success, making sure we're pushing for affordable health in a whole nother way. And then, of course, I really want to see us fight to make sure that legislation like the John Lewis Voting Rights Act is really pushed forward. It makes no sense to me that we're talking about hate crimes. We're talking about people targeting people of color by zip codes. We have where congressional lines have purposefully been drawn in Alabama in terms of redistricting so that the African-American voice is diminished from 29% even down to 14%. It makes no sense that we're still fighting to try to have the Voting Rights Act provide protections today that it began providing back in the 60s. That makes no sense. It makes no sense that we're still trying to make sure that we have election security on one side, but on the side that we're on right now, talking about the fact that we want our voices heard. We're seeing where people are struggling. There's voter suppression. We're having trouble trying to get mail-in votes. We're having trouble trying to get to a point where we can get to an early voting, get to a no excuse absentee voting policy. In Alabama, in the United States, period, because I'll be one of 100 United States senators, there should be no reason why anybody of age to vote is able to vote. Let me just throw this in. Our Alabama Secretary of State even says that 96% of the African Americans who are eligible or of age to vote are registered, when the U.S. Census report says only 67.5%. There's something wrong with that discrepancy. There's something wrong when Walt Maddox and I ran back in 18 that we lost the difference between Kay Ivey's votes and Walt Maddox's votes were 327,000 votes, but there were 337,000 African Americans who did not vote in 18. There's something wrong with that. So why aren't people voting? Well, we push people to get out and participate in a census. But then when you have, from a legislative point of view, and even the Supreme Court pushing back to our court saying it's okay for us to do what we do to, again, take down the African American representation, people are giving up. They're tired. So why am I running? Because I, again, believe every Alabamian's voice ought to be heard. One president, I'm gonna slide it back to you. One Democratic president in most recent years said there's nothing more fundamentally important than the voices of every American being heard. And right now, Alabama, we're seeing voices of women, men, and people of color being silenced every day.
I absolutely agree with everything you said. I do have a few areas. We have about 20 more minutes, so we're still good on time. I want to hit the first thing I want to go back is to education. We've seen, not just in Alabama, but all over the U.S., of teachers talk about burnout. You know, it's not any longer where we're seeing teachers that have been in education for 35 years, retiring 40 years, 50 years. You have teachers, some that have done 10 years and they're already sometimes less, and they're saying, no, I can't do this. If elected senator, what bills or resources are you willing to work with your colleagues to make sure that our teachers have adequate resources, they are appreciated, and they have better pay? Just about every teacher that I talk to, and even those that are in administration, those are the three things that they talk about when they experience burnout or their colleagues experience burnout.
Well, my father was a principal. My mother, let me back up. My father was a principal, but he worked his way through the ranks and became superintendent when he retired. My mother was a teacher. She was a nurse, then became a first grade teacher, elementary ed for all the years before retirement. My brother was the youngest superintendent of South Carolina. I was a dean, professor. My wife taught. I mean, we have educators throughout our family.
Okay.
You know, when I taught just one class at the university level, I had sometimes as many as 100 students in a class. And when you think about a class that size and how many papers have to be graded, how many students you have to interact with, and on top of that, you have each student dealing with their own crises, their own caseloads, and they're struggling with trying to stay in school, trying to deal with parents, sometimes a first generation college student. There's a lot of stress in those students. There's a lot of stress on the instructor. I mean, you're dealing with a totally different generation that you have to hold their attention differently. You can't just have a 50-minute class where it's just a lecture and they're just taking notes. You have to have an interactive learning environment. Back then it was Blackboard or maybe you had some active learning style where you were constantly working with them. So you could be teaching the class, having some type of simulation, vestibule learning, some type of training going on as you're teaching so that they're right there with you. When you look at all of that and in the environment now where you can't ever really turn anything off, people can text you 24 hours a day. They can email you. You might say, I have office hours in the brick and mortar, but when you go to the brick and click, they can text you 2 o'clock in the morning. This is why our teachers are feeling burnout. And this is why I think, especially in states like Alabama, I keep arguing for an educational lottery. We need more money in the education area. You know, we have in our state a general fund, an educational fund, and you oftentimes hear people talk about the educational trust fund being rated. You feel like money is for education is not the highest priority. So when you have teachers who feel like they're second rate, that they're not treated on a level where they're like the engineer, the physician, the lawyer, when they feel like they are the ones who are educating the very same people I just talked about, but they're lowest in terms of priorities from the state's perspective, they give up. I mean, you talk about them, people being on the front lines, teachers go on the front lines every day. They're dealing with people coming from multiple homes where there could be exposure to COVID. You have people who are dealing with mental health challenges. They're in safe zones, allegedly, or at least proposed that they're in safe zone, is told they're in safe zones. But, you know, people bring guns to school. We've, you know, from Columbine on up, they're on the front lines. And so we have to do a better job at preparing them. We're arguing whether or not they should have guns in the classroom, whether or not they should be armed, whether or not they should have more safety protocols in place. These are teachers who are dealing with a lot. So we really have to make sure that they're supported mentally also. So this mental health funding that I'm talking about is not just for people who are, 25 to 75. This is from a pediatric point of view. This is from people who are younger of age. This is for people who are teaching. A lot of people need this type of help. So yes, we do well trying to say we're going to raise teacher pay. We're going to help them out with retirement. But let me give you this fact. The average retiree in Alabama makes about $1,500 a month. Now that may seem like a lot, but that's only $300 or $400 more than a person in poverty. So when you look at what a teacher has to deal with every day, going in the front lines, being out there, working with kids, giving up their time, their energy, and then taking care of their families, and then only retiring to make a few $100s more than the person who is out there in poverty, there's no intrinsic reward for that. So we have to do a better job at not only, again, on the front end saying, how can we raise that salary? How can we help you, student, to have cost of living, not be so far outpaced by the cost of education? But we have to also look at retirees and say, we need to make sure you can look forward to a future that treats you well. Most teachers that I know, it's sad now, most younger teachers aren't holding down one job. They're holding down two. They're teaching in the morning and working at a mall at night. Should not be that way.
Very true. Next question. When we talk about candidates, we want to vote people in who operate with the spirit of honesty, integrity, and I'm going to steal what Attorney Powell just said, good temperament. Talk about those and why those are important, and talk about when elected how you plan to display those attributes.
Well, I think you have to have someone who recognizes in this day and age, you're going to be dealing with probably 50% of people who dislike what you do, and maybe 50 who are supportive of what you do. Your temperament has to be one where you recognize that you're a servant leader. You're elected to serve people. I'm not going in to become the Democratic U.S. Senator or the Republican U.S. Senator, or even an independent U.S. Senator. I'm going in to become the U.S. Senator, period. So I would work along, in this case, Senator Tuberville, to make sure that I fight for every Alabamian. I cannot allow people to get under my skin. I have to make sure that I am person, again, when I say servant leadership minded, I have to recognize that people might not always agree. My party might not always agree, but I have to do what's in the best interest of the people who have elected me to office.
Okay. You talked about healthcare earlier, dealing from the standpoint of Medicaid, but let's talk about the Affordable Healthcare Act, which of course is put into play by President Barack Obama. Let's talk about that. When elected, how do you plan to work with your colleagues to make sure that every American continues to have affordable health care?
Well, it's important that we have that health care, especially in Alabama, where I told you Medicaid needs to be expanded, where we have 800,000 people in poverty and tens of thousands who don't have access to health care. That's why an affordable health care is important. The problem we had with the affordable health care when it rolled out is, honestly, people didn't like who rolled it out. I'm going to be very blunt. When the same type plan was rolled out in Massachusetts by another U.S. senator, who's a sitting senator now, he was then governor, people had no problem with it. But when it was initially called Obamacare, people had issues with it. You can ask somebody right now if they want Obamacare, and they're, of course, not a Democrat, they would probably say they don't want it. You ask them if they want the Affordable Care Act, they say they'll take it. They don't know the difference there. People often say they don't want the government in their lives, period. But then they're quick to say, but give me my Social Security check. I need Medicare, I need Medicaid. The Affordable Care Act, especially in Alabama, would help people who have pre-existing conditions from being denied. It would help people from a mental health perspective, as I just mentioned a number of times, even tonight, from finding themselves being in positions where people can deny them health care. And there's no parity there, no equity there, again, for substance abuse issues, health issues. It would allow people who are youth to not be booted off of their parents' insurance as quickly. So we need to make sure we protect that, we keep that in place, especially right now where we're at dealing with COVID-19 death rates in the United States crossing that 1 million mark. More and more people are finding that healthcare is important. And as I just mentioned, believe it or not, healthcare closures or hospital closures, since 2005, we saw 7 rural healthcare centers close, 7 rural hospitals close. We lost 180 beds since 2005. The problem we have with healthcare in Alabama has been further magnified through COVID-19. And we just saw with the lack of beds about a year ago, originally it started with us not having enough equipment, right? Not having enough ways that we could treat people who were dealing with COVID-19. Masks became an issue. But then we saw strictly the burden on the healthcare system alone. We're seeing where more people from a rural perspective are further away from hospitals, can't get the treatment they need. Again, I was just in a county a day or two ago where people practically died of COVID, unable to get to a hospital. That is just unimaginable. One of the things that you probably might hear me say if you're on the campaign trail is, as a U.S. Senator, you have my commitment that the next time you hear us talk about sending billions of dollars to protect the interests of other countries worldwide, you're going to hear me, first of all, ask questions. How is it that we can send billions of dollars to fight for the interests of other nations, but we can't spend $1 million or if not $2 million to get that rural hospital in, again, Pickens County? How is it that we can spend billions to make sure we have missile batteries? And I'm all for protecting Ukraine. I'm all for doing whatever NATO wants to do, working alongside them. I'm all for sanctions. I'm all for what President Biden has done. But how is it that we can send tens of billions of dollars for that fight, but we took years to get places like Flint the water they needed, the pipes pulled out? Why are we now just talking about changing the infrastructure, getting lead pipes out and getting things in place so that we don't have in Lowndes County and Mobile County the issues that we have right now with drinking water and contamination? These are things you can get from me. These all route back to healthcare, the environment itself being protected, addressing climate change. These all deal with healthcare overall. So as a U.S. Senator, you're going to get somebody that's going to push back, somebody that's going to fight.
As we're nearing the end of our broadcast, give us 2 things. I know you've toured all over Alabama, but give us 2 things that you probably hear just about every time you go to a different city or county in Alabama that are very important to voters.
I think voters generally say that they don't feel their voices are heard. They feel they're being overlooked. They feel that they don't have a voice. When you look at the Electoral College itself and the popular vote, just one example, people feel like they show up in numbers, they get people registered, they go out, fraternities, sororities, churches, they push forward with registering people. We see where the person wins the popular vote and then the Electoral College rolls around and there's a different result, right? So people wonder, how does this work? We're seeing where people talk about a democracy, talk about rights, but yet again, minorities feel like in general that their rights are being stripped away in some kind of way. We're seeing a war on the middle class. We talk about Alabama where there is a regressive tax in place. There is a grocery tax. And when you have people who are poor and most of their disposable income is actually spent on buying groceries, that type of tax hurts them more than anybody else. Mm-hmm. So again, we need somebody who's going to fight for them. We see where representation is important. I talk to unions all the time, union leaders, union workers, union stewards, union presidents, union secretary treasurers, etc. People want to feel like everybody's doing their fair share, that the load is being carried by everybody. Sadly, we have one of the lowest union representation levels in years. But yet, if you look at the number of people who are participating in unions versus the number of people who've benefited from what the unions offer, you'd be surprised that more than 18,000 people in Alabama have been benefited from the union work representation they provide and never paid any dues. So again, it's that people want to know they have a voice. People want to feel like they have representation, and people just want to feel like someone can get in and really make a change. I'm being very blunt right now. I just feel like a lot of people feel like their voice, their vote doesn't count, and they say they want to hold it at times. But I charge people, I admonish people, what is your vote being held going to do the day after the election? If you don't use that vote that people died for, fought for, if you don't speak up, making your voice heard at the poll, then you can't complain when things don't go the way you want. So again, those are the main things I'm hearing people say they want. I believe people are really tired right now. I believe you're going to see people rush to the polls and try to get more people registered because they're feeling like in Alabama that beyond their voice not being heard, that African Americans overall are just being treated in a negative way. Asians are not being treated well. And again, I'm a person who is inclusive of everyone. I'm a person who's going to go to work and fight for every Alabamian every day. But it's very true. We have a real problem with race right now. You have a topic that's in the news right now where someone has, again, we've had 201 mass murders this year. Okay, you can do the math and see that's probably 50 a month at least, right? Where we are right now. We can talk about gun sense. We can talk about how many magazines a gun should have. We can talk about modified guns. We can talk about whether we're Second Amendment or we're not. But let's drill down for a second. The last big issue we saw in the news was someone targeted people of color by their zip code. Pure hatred. So we have to figure out how to have a discussion about race in Alabama. How we can really talk about the fact that in 2022, as all people are created equal, this should not be. So that's what I'll bring to the table. I'll be a voice for all people. I believe because I have Republican friends, Democratic friends, independent friends, I'll be able to represent everybody well. Yes, I'm a bishop. Yes, I'm a pastor, but I recognize the needs of all of my friends. We have LGBTQIA people who feel like they're being beat up right now in Alabama. We have people who feel like because their lifestyle, their decisions about what they do with their body has put them at risk in a place where they aren't being heard, where they aren't being treated fairly. I think we all have to have a senator that's going to listen to everybody, see what's at stake, and be willing to make a decision based on what the majority of people want and not just based on a political ideology or what they believe is right.
Okay. One of our final questions. So Alabama, the bill was recently passed, the concealed gun law. What steps would you take to work with your constituents to make sure that this is not a bill that is passed nationwide?
Well, first of all, I'm proud to say I was on in a forum earlier today with MAD, Make a Difference. I was obviously a gun sense candidate, am a gun sense candidate, someone who is very much concerned about gun safety. I also say that I'm a pro Second Amendment person. And you might say, how can you be both? Well, from a perspective of the Second Amendment, I have no problem with people carrying weapons, using weapons. I have a problem when weapons are in the hands of dangerous people. So I believe we need to enforce the laws that are on the books. I believe when we know there are people who have mental health issues that would obviously cause some concern, they should not be in positions to have their hands on guns. I believe when we know that there are people who have expressed, as I just mentioned, that they have some manifesto ideas, some creeds, some things that are on the internet, social media that look like they are intentionally going to harm people, those should raise some flags. And I know that there's some who are very critical and say, well, then you're not Second Amendment if you're from any perspective trying to take guns out of the hands of people. Well, this new law that we have out there has put people like me and the two candidates that you had on earlier in a very dangerous position. I go into places now and I don't know who has a gun. I don't know who has a weapon. at least there was some level of control before. So you're seeing where some businesses are using metal detectors and making sure that they're doing all they can to make sure employees are coming into safe work zones. Again, schools are doing the same. But right now, we need to push any legislation that, again, would basically enforce the laws that are on the books and making sure that we are not allowing guns to get into the hands of dangerous people, period. I mean, that's as simple as I can make it. Anything else is just going to cause further healthcare concerns, further deaths, death toll risings in our state, in our country. And it's just, I'm tired of hearing people saying, I'm offering my thoughts and prayers. We need to see where people like myself and others really tackle this in the Senate and make sure we do something about it, not just talk about it.
Okay. So we have about 6 minutes left. I want you to take these final moments just to appeal to the viewing and listening audience to let people know why you're the right candidate for the job and that you will be an advocate for all of Alabama, fighting for the needs of all citizens, regardless of whether they voted for you or not, or if they're Democratic or Republican.
Well, you've already mentioned at the opening of this particular segment that I'm someone who has served in a number of capacities. I've served as the chairman of the Lauderdale County Democratic Executive Committee. I've served on the State Democratic Executive Committee. I've been a city council person. I've been appointed by a local city council to serve on a hospital board in our great state. I've been afforded a number of opportunities to serve. I've written books about servant leadership. My doctorates are actually in organization and management, also religion. I have a doctorate in psychology with the Christian worldview. All of that being said, even an engineering degree and an MBA, Master of Business Administration. All of that being said, I believe that has equipped me, prepared me to be the best person to represent the great state of Alabama. I'm a person who's understood small businesses, worked with small businesses. I've trained small business leaders, CEOs, to help them to get out and start the businesses as entrepreneurs. One of the things that I teach in the classroom up front is basically dealing with risk management, and then even working your way to business ownership and investment. From a perspective of working with people in the community, I've worked with the nonprofits that are on the front lines, assisting people, helping people. But what we need right now is a U.S. senator who will go in and represent Alabama well, but also do what, honestly, Richard Shelby has done as a Republican. He has gone in, and of course, he's part of the Appropriations Committee. He's brought millions of dollars back to Alabama. I intend to put my 6 years in, and maybe 12 if the people of Alabama will be so gracious to send me back again, to actually make sure I do all I can to bring home the bacon. We don't need another ideologue. We don't need anybody who's just going to sit there, be missing in action, but we need someone who's going to fight to make sure money is in the right places to do what needs to be done. I've been part of the White House Faith-Based Initiative training. I've been part of a number of trainings that have been out there for fundraising, for grant writing, etc. So I definitely know how to not only raise the money, but bring the money in that's going to help our great state. And I intend to do everything I can to reach every Alabamian. I've demonstrated this lastly by traveling our great state since 2016. We have 67 counties. I've crossed the state. People have said to me this time, Will, you have left everything on the field. You of course, I couldn't hit every county. It's a big state. It's a wide state. But I've traveled tens of thousands of miles across this state, talking to everybody I can, north, south, east, or west. And people are just excited about my candidacy. I regret that few people, I regret that there are a lot of people out there who still don't know who's on the ballot up and down the ticket. I wish there was a better way that as Democrats, we had a lot more money available to us where we could spend more time floating commercials out there so people got to know us better, those who I couldn't reach. But I believe after we cross this primary on the 24th, I believe this is going to become an election that's going to be really known nationally. I'll wrap it up by saying I have the people who have worked with the Warnock, the Ossoff, and the Abrams team, work with them from the ground level, the grassroots point of view. Of course, They'll be running an issue-based campaign, and we believe that Alabama will be the next Georgia. We've seen where a Reverend Warnock could do it in Georgia, so certainly a Bishop Boyd can do it in Alabama. We believe that people are looking at integrity right now. You know, at one point in time, people might say, well, I don't want a man of faith being my United States senator. Well, now because of all of the moral incontinence, if I could say it that way, because people have been so unethical in office, people want somebody who has strong beliefs and values that look out for belonging, inclusion, and even diversity. They want someone like myself in office, and that's why I believe I'll be the best person to serve every Alabamian at this great point in time. If anybody wants to learn more about my website, my issues, where I stand, if you don't mind me just inviting them, it's right there, drwillboyd.com or willboyd, drwillboyd.com will provide for you my major 6 pillars, but everything out there that they might really want to ask about. If someone just doesn't see the answers they want, call me. My number is 205-769-4422. 205-769-4422. I'm out there sometimes on Facebook Messenger, and people think they're talking to my team, and they're talking to me. People call, and say, hey, can you ask Dr. Boyd to do this or do that? You're talking to him right now. I'm trying to be that way. And people even ask me now, will you be this way as a senator? Of course. Why not? That's what you're electing me to be. So I've had a good time talking to 11 people sometimes at the restaurant named East of the Mississippi. And sometimes I found myself, as I will very soon, in the East, in Anniston, in Oxford, talking to people in Moody, Alabama. I've gone down south and hit the trail in Mobile and Baldwin, and I'll be back up in North Alabama this weekend doing it all over again. So I'm crisscrossing. If I could close with that song, I've been everywhere, man. I've been everywhere. And I'll keep going there to make sure every Alabamian's voice is being heard.
Awesome. Well, Dr. Boyd, we thank you for joining us. And for those who are viewing tonight, I did as we did with all our candidates tonight. Dr. Boyd's website and his Facebook page is in the comments. And I encourage you to share this, because one of the reasons I was determined to book a candidate for U.S. Senate, and Dr. Boyd graciously confirmed, a lot of people don't know, as he stated, that we do have a man of color on the ballot. And it's very important that we do get out and vote. So I encourage you to share this, because if you learn something, 9 times out of 10, if you share it, others will learn something as well. So again, I want to thank you, and we wish you Godspeed in our upcoming election. And we look forward to you rocking this out in the primaries, where we can bring it on home in November.
Thank you so much for the interview. I appreciate your time, sir.
You're welcome. So ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of our Perspective Meet the Candidate Part 4. Tomorrow we're going even higher. We're going to have Louise Alexander. She's currently a state representative. She's looking to be elected to as a state senator for Alabama. And then we will also have attorney Carla Morton on. She is also running for Circuit Court Judge, place 23. And then attorney Ruth Washington. She's also running for a Circuit Court Judge position. So tune in tomorrow at 7 p.m. and we're looking for a great candidate. So 2 more days and we'll be done. But like I stated, I did want to offer this to all candidates who are interested to come on and let you know what they were running for. So again, as I always say, keep the faith, and I will see you all back here tomorrow, same place, same time. Have a great evening.